The time is 1:45 a.m. Boat 2 is launched from the port side. Officer Boxhall is placed in charge, and this boat carries around 24 people despite a capacity of 40. However, just before leaving, Boxhall comes across a box of green flares. These are White Star Line company signal rockets, and he grabs that box thinking it will be helpful later on. Around the same time, Captain Smith hails boats 2 and 6 through his megaphone and urges them to come to the aft gangway doors to embark more passengers. So Lightoller had ordered the bosun to fetch 6 sailors and then go open the E-deck aft gangway door on the port side. He never saw these gentlemen again, though whether they all perished around this time or not is still a matter of debate, though we know they didn't survive in the end. It does seem that for some reason they chose to open the D-deck gangway door instead of E-deck, and boat 6 did not return because Quartermaster Hitchens famously said, "It's our lives now, not theirs," and he feared suction despite Molly Brown and others urging him to return. And later, when the wreck was discovered, they found the D-deck aft gangway door still open. The door fell off in 1998. It was recovered and restored. Today you can see it in a museum in exhibitions. Boat 2, however, did obey the captain's orders. Boxhall revealed in an interview in 1962 that Captain Smith ordered him via megaphone to come to the starboard aft gangway door, and he rowed his boat to go around the stern, and he noticed suction as well. The ship's propellers were out of water by this time, and he said that the doors were open, but I saw such a great mob standing in the doorway that I feared they would swamp my boat if they jumped, and therefore he orders his men to row the boat away. He also claimed that he lit his first flare at this spot once he could not see any other boats in the distance. But the trouble is that Charles Stigall from boat number 1 said Lookout Simons in his boat communicated with Boxhall saying, "Is that you, Boxy?" At 1:50, boats 4 and 10 are lowered from port side. Quartermaster Walter Perkis and able seaman Edward Bully are placed in charge of the boats respectively. They carry around 33 and 40 people, though boat 4 will later pick up more people from the water. And with this, all the wooden lifeboats have left. Now only 4 collapsible boats remain, 2 of which are on each side, all stored on the boat deck. At 2 a.m., collapsible C is launched from the starboard side. It carries around 41 people despite a capacity of 47, and Quartermaster George Rowe is placed in charge. Mr. Ismay escapes in this boat, creating a controversy which lasts to this day. And 5 minutes later, collapsible D is launched from the port side. This boat carries around 27 people despite a capacity of 47. Quartermaster Arthur John Bright is placed in charge, and Slovakian steerage passenger Michael Navratli quickly brings his 2 boys, later known as the Titanic orphans, to the boat. Lightoller orders crewmen to form a circle around the boat and only allow women and children in. So Michael just gives his sons to the crewmen and tells them, put them in the boat. As the boat begins to pull away, Michael gives his boys ages 2 and 3 a final message. So in case you're unaware, basically Michael suspected that his wife was being unfaithful, and that's why he kidnapped his 2 sons and was traveling with them to start a new life in America. At least this is what everybody says. But in his final message, he said something different. And with this, only 2 more collapsible boats remain. Now the trouble is that they are stored upside down on the roof of officers' quarters, which is near the forwardmost funnel, aka funnel number 1. So they need to be recovered, brought down, and then attached to the davits of emergency cutters, which by the way are the same davits through which collapsibles C and D were launched. On the port side, Lightoller orders his men to push collapsible B from the roof to the boat deck. The boat lands upside down and soon water rises, so the boat begins to float off. On the starboard side, Murdoch's men create a makeshift ramp of oars and slide collapsible A down the roof. Then, once it lands upright, Moody suggests just loading the boat and waiting for the flooding to carry it away, but then Murdoch thinks they have time. So, he decides to do it the normal way and begins attaching it to the falls, aka the davits. Lightoller recalled that around this time, he, the ship's doctors and pursers all said their goodbyes to each other, and he personally shook hands with all of them, and they were saying to each other, "Goodbye, old man," waiting for their fate. The doctor even joked with the sweating Lightoller, saying, "Lights, are you still warm?" At 2:15, the water has now reached the forward end of the boat deck. The ship takes a slight plunge, and the men now hurry to free collapsible A from the falls. However, as they finally manage to do it, the boat floats off, throwing most of its occupants into the sea. In a hurry, the canvas sides of the boat are not raised, and this will soon result in the boat getting swamped. Titanic temporarily recovers to an even keel, and then the bow section begins plunging deeper. The only difference is that this time the plunge is continuous. Colonel Gracie and his friend are both washed from the roof of officers' quarters, and his friend Smith are not seen again. Around the same time, Harold Bright recalled seeing Mr. Andrews and Captain Smith jumping overboard from the bridge. But it's worth mentioning that Captain Smith's fate is a hot debate to this day. Then funnel number 1 collapses, and just seconds later, funnel number 2 also comes down, nearly crushing collapsible B. The falling funnels have not only crushed swimmers beneath them, but they have also caused the collapsible boats to float off from the sinking ship. At 2:17, the lights are now glowing red and dim because there is not enough steam being supplied to the generators. The ship reaches an angle of 30 degrees by the head, and then the hull finally gives way, and the Titanic breaks up on the upper decks into 2 pieces. The lights go out, and according to some survivors, a few emergency lights stay on as the emergency generators kicked in, along with a few oil lamps on the masts that were lit till the last minute. Afterwards, the 2 funnels also collapse. According to trimmer Thomas Patrick Dillon, aka Paddy, who was on the stern at this time, the last funnel fell backwards. Then the stern settles to nearly even keel, but it doesn't settle there for a long time because remember the double bottom? Now the double bottom comes in action, and it exerts a powerful tug on the front port side of the stern section. So it also begins plunging down. Spinning counterclockwise, it rises to a nearly full vertical position, and some survivors see the ship's propellers pass over their heads at this moment. The bow and stern soon separate, with the bow plunging straight towards the bottom of the ocean, while the stern begins to flood gradually at first, but then exponentially with an increasing speed. Eventually, the stern also takes a plunge and then sinks straight towards the bottom. Or if you believe our buddy Charles Yogan, who was on the bridge at this on the stern at this time, and was drunk with whiskey, he said the stern capsized in the final minutes. It's worth mentioning that he was on the railings and was the last person off the ship, because he said he jumped just before the stern disappeared underwater. Once the stern disappears from sight, Officer Pittman, who has been watching the black silhouette of the Titanic sink, looks at his watch and announces to the occupants, "It's 2:20.